restream server issues. That's what he said. It means nothing. Oh, all right. Okay, we're live on the old YouTube. Okay, we're
Hey.
good. We got 40 minutes. We're gonna talk. We're talking one game here. We'll survive. We'll survive from that one. I didn't know that little trick, but that's now going to be in my arsenal of checkpoints here. So there we go. Let's see. I'll send out the tweets, and we should be good. Okay. So, but back to that. He doesn't throw the ball very far, but that's really not going to impact Jared Cook that much. It's not going to impact Kamara, and it's not going to impact Thomas. What it is going to impact is their upside ability, because they're going to have to do everything after the catch. So from a PPR, full PPR standpoint, it's fine. From half point, you're counting more on touchdowns. Now, we always count more on touchdowns there on FanDuel, but it just makes it a little trickier for those guys. So I like Ezekiel Elliott. He's going to be my number one guy. I will be having him and Prescott on almost every team, and just going from there. And I'll be hitting my little crunch button here in a second, but that's kind of where I'm standing on this one amongst the high level guys. After that, there's literally question marks with every other person you're going to get to, and the pricing diverges on FanDuel and DraftKings with some of the players. So I like the difficulty over there on FanDuel. I just couldn't find lineups that I liked. I prefer for DraftKings working on the salary there because it's 1.5 times for your captain and then the regular price for everybody else. I think that's a little more interesting, and they have a lower salary floor, which also makes for some creative roster construction.
Yeah, I agree. It's tough. You got to, one of the things is you got to make sure you're comfortable with wherever you're placing your chips, right? Don't just do something just to do it. Make sure that you feel confident before you make that decision, pull the trigger, and ultimately press that button and submit. So as we go through the show tonight, folks that are watching, first of all, thanks for tuning in. Feel free to ask questions, comments throughout the show. We'll try to get to them as we work up until kickoff for tonight's Saints-Cowboys matchup. So for next, if you want to, let's just kind of dive in. We'll start with the Cowboys. We'll go Cowboys first. We'll run through by position, make sure we get enough time for ourselves to circle back on the Saints position by position, and then just a little strategy stuff throughout. Again, for your questions, and we'll try to get to them as the show goes on. So, Emet, we talked about who you like, and I know you're big on Zeke. Saw that in your article on awesemo.com. But taking a step back, the quarterback position. Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott, he's been off to an impressive start, has had some favorable matchups, to say the least. So interested to see how he does tonight. Saints defense, tough. Not as tough as maybe they have been in the past, giving up a lot of yards. You mentioned that again in your article there. How are you feeling about Dak going into tonight's matchup?
Well, the question for me was, is he the number one guy, or is it going to be Elliott? Ultimately, I came down on Elliott, but I wouldn't fight anybody either way on that. I'm looking here at one of our co-hosts. I'm going to drop this link in chat over on sponsor Fantasydraft. One Adam Scherer is winning $100,000 right now.
Heyo!
Now, what he is going to have to do is deal with the night game, because this game that's upcoming is on that main slate. So he doesn't have anybody from that. He's got about a 10-point lead, and then if we look to see where people are going to catch him, it's going to be kind of hard to see, because they're like right now I've got 4 players from this game. So I've got, I'm not even going to appear on the leaderboard, but, I won't have a fighting chance with my lineup, but because I made some poor choices with Marlon Mack and the Indianapolis Colts, but bygones. Yep. I was winning about $4,000 earlier today after the early slate, and I didn't have anybody going on the late slate, and I got caught and went from winning, $4,000 to winning about $500. So I went for a walk this afternoon. I didn't want to watch the games.
Do it, right? It's the NFL. I mean, who in the hell saw Colts at home getting spanked by Oakland? I'm sorry, the Raiders. And, if you're not watching, if you don't have a TV in front of you, the Jaguars just kicked a game-winning field goal I'm very happy I had Jared Lambo going in a few season-long leagues, so that was nice. A little finish there for a victory for the Jags. But we see every week. You never know what's going to happen. Who saw Jordan Howard going off with 3 touchdowns on Thursday night? That's why you gotta play the game, right? So we like Dak. Again, off to a hot start. He's going to contribute a lot offensively. We know who his main weapons are. But if you do choose Dak, if you're maybe putting him in that captain spot, or you're putting him in your lineup elsewhere and want to leave that captain spot for maybe someone like a Zeke or what have you, who are you stacking with Dak tonight, Emac?
So I'm actually making more Zach and Elliott lineups, and the wide receiver I'm choosing is Amari Cooper. I need the price savings. I'm sorry, not Amari Cooper, Randall Cobb. If you go with Amari Cooper, you're really hamstringing yourself, and it's causing some other issues with how what you're going to be able to do with your lineup. So my main thing is I'm not really worried about getting Teddy Bridgewater in my lineups. Sure. So putting the cart before the horse, I always say this in my article, when you have a bad quarterback, he is one of 2 starting quarterbacks in this game and in the player pool. So we have to consider him. However, I am just not seeing the love here for Bridgewater. I think his people are going to need to work their magic on their own. I feel that the Saints defense is okay. They're not good. They're not as good as they have been. They've had some good years and bad years mixed in here. They're not as good as the decent years, in my opinion. They're going to really need to keep the clock moving, which means a lot of running plays. And through his first 2 games, I think he's averaging something like 180 yards passing in his first 2 starts. That's not going to help out our fantasy scores. So I'm giving up Bridgewater, but I'm landing so heavily now on the Cowboys. It's an issue. So then the question becomes, what do you look to come back with on the other side? And my answer is, I don't know. That's where we all have to make some tough choices.
So you like Cobb tonight. If you're taking Dak and making the investment there, you like Cobb. How do you feel about Devin Smith? He's been on the field for about 43% of the snaps. We saw last week, and when Gallup hasn't been on the field, he's liked to go that way. Cobb, again, 73% of the snaps. He's got a handful more targets, but they both have found the end zone once. They're both about equal as far as receiving yards, and Smith has done it in less time. How do you feel about Smith if you're looking at throwing someone like a Dak into your lineup?
I want to say their prices, Cobb and Smith, I thought they were inverted on the 2 sites. They're very close. I would still lean towards Cobb. Smith, if we remember, he's been around. He was, I think he was drafted in the 1st or 2nd round, but he was with the Jets for a couple years. And part-time player, and then now he's with the Cowboys. I think he's okay, but he's not Michael Gallup. And I don't even think he's Randall Cobb. I think he can run fast, and that's about it. I don't think he's as good as running routes. I don't think he's good as getting separation, etc. Anything can happen in our one game here, but I still, even though I'm saying these less than stellar things, I've got him above every Saint receiver except for Thomas, because Ted Ginn, an afterthought, because I just don't. He's got to get the ball down the field. We know Traquan Smith's out. Austin played 25 or 30 snaps last week, didn't get a single target. So I'm looking at Smith as probably the 4th best receiver in this game, given the matchup and quarterback considerations here. So I have no issues playing him. He's not my favorite guy. So I'm looking at my Draftkings. So I've got Elliott, Camaro, and Prescott in here. And then if I go with Lutz and Jarwin, I got $5,000. I need to play somebody else. I had Tony Pollard in there, but I'm trying to decide, do I go with Pollard or do I go with Jared Cook? Jared Cook has only had he had in Bridgewater's first game he had 7 targets. In the last game he had 2. I don't want to read anything really into that one way or the other, but on the season, I mean, he's seen, 12 targets for 5 catches for 69 yards. While that's nice to get 69 yards, it's nothing from a fantasy perspective. So I'm almost leaning towards, even though I have, you know what? I'm gonna go with if I go Devin Smith. Here's the trick. If I go Devin Smith, I put Prescott in the captain. I have enough for Elliott.
There you go.
So I'm doing that, and I literally zeroed out my dollars. So I'm guessing this is going to be a relatively common lineup, but that's going to be I just wanted to get my main one in here, for that. So, but as I said, we're making tough choices. If you go with the big three in any incarnation on FanDuel, your next 2 guys, or on DraftKings, your next 3, they're head scratchers. We're going to be looking at the kickers. It's almost a must to have a kicker. It's almost a must to punt with all these crappy tight ends. And then you're not going to get anything really good, per se. That makes it tricky. But the second you go away from one of those big 3, you get all these ancillary players here, which is the challenge. And I think that's what's going to make or break everybody's night.
Yeah, very top-heavy lineup of players for tonight, right? There's those big few, as you mentioned. There's Dallas' big 3, and there's kind of the, I guess we'll call it big 3. I don't know if I would want to throw Teddy Bridgewater into a big anything, but we know who's going to be getting the lion's share of the targets, carries, etc. for the Saints. So help me understand, Emac, if you like Zeke and you like Dak, somewhat conflicting approaches, I guess one might say, right? Typically, from my understanding, you would want to do that. So is there a reasoning why is it just from a cost perspective, or any reason why you're feeling, hey, it's Zeke and Dak tonight, but maybe not one of those wideouts, or is it just more cost?
So the theory behind it, and I won't be alone in coming to this, but you'd like to think that if it's a passing touchdown, Dak is going to be involved in half of it, and if it's the ground game, then it's most likely going to be Ezekiel Elliott. So you're trying to capture a piece of all of the touchdowns. That's not how you get a high upside lineup, because a lot of people are going to be doing this. But I'm mostly playing 3-mans, 5-mans, and some head-to-heads tonight, and now I'm just going to build out about 70 lineups to put in some of the cheapy quarter contests and dollar contests here, which I've already got a whole bunch of rules set in my lineup here to account for things like that. But when you're just consolidating in your stuff, to me, I don't really want to go with Amari Cooper. Now, he's been dealing with the sore ankle. That should not be an issue tonight. But he's priced so closely to Prescott and Elliott and Camaro on the side. I just find him being the odd man out on DraftKings. If we go over and look at FanDuel here, shout out Adam's holding on. He's just got to sweat out this last game. If we look over here, excuse me, on FanDuel, it's all about the touchdowns, and I'm okay with Cooper over there, but for me, that's more of a tournament play, which we'll spend. We'll pivot here in a minute to start talking about tournaments, but that's kind of where I stand.
Okay. All right. So as we keep rolling through positions for the Cowboys, we talked about the running back. We obviously we talked about quarterback and Dak. Always leads us into talking about the wideouts. We know Zeke is our number 1 top player and who we like the most for tonight. How do you feel about Tony Pollard? Are you throwing him in there to try to, counteract some of the more expensive players? He's got a decent amount of carries the last few weeks. Any consideration of Pollard tonight?
Yes, and he has carved out a role on his own. It's not. He's going to get some touches. It doesn't have to be a blowout. It doesn't have to be an in-game issue there with Elliott at all. He's carved out about a third of the work. That's fine. There are definitely paths for him to succeed, and if he doesn't do great, it's probably the way you're building your lineups. Your rest of your lineups probably not doing that great either. So it's kind of I'm okay putting him in, and I can see the merit of putting him in and then having, like Kamara and Thomas on the other side, and then going with Dak, not Elliott, and hoping Elliott, they get up big, or Elliott doesn't need to do as much of the work, or maybe Elliott gets 60 yards and 2 touchdowns, and they're up big, and they say, hey, why don't you just take a bench here? We're gonna go the last quarter here with Pollard. So I don't want to have Pollard and Elliott in the same lineup unless I'm building more than probably 50.
Okay. And yeah, to your point, there's always that chance they get up, or is the chance that they use, Zeke helps get the Cowboys into the red zone, into the 10, into the 5. Sometimes guys can be gassed when they get, the ball all the way down the field, and maybe it opens up opportunity for Pollard to sneak in a vulture touchdown type of thing. He doesn't have a touchdown, yet, but we shall see tonight. So going past the running back position, I think there's one position that I was interested in hearing your thoughts on tonight is the tight end position for the Dallas Cowboys. We know the veteran back off of retirement, Jason Witten, but there's another name that for folks that are looking to save money might be interested in, Blake Jarwin. What do you feel on the tight end position for the Cowboys tonight?
Yeah,
If you had to pick one, who is it? And then just what are your thoughts overall?
For me, it would be Jarwin actually.
Yep.
Over Witten. I want to look at some of my numbers here. So if you guys go look, I'm going to drop the link in Slack or in the YouTube chat here. I try to put in a chart that shows everybody's all the targets, plays, and receiving production, because I feel that's mostly where we want to know what's the untold story, etc. Now it's pretty easy because we've only got 3 weeks of data. I'm not sure what I'm going to do going forward, because you want to start looking at trends, like guys missing games and other stuff can influence what's going on. But if I go, oops, got too many windows open here. If I go back and look at the Cowboys, I'm seeing that Jarwin has been in on 86 snaps, and he's gotten 7 targets. Witten's been in on another 50 additional snaps, and he's only gotten 5 more targets. So Witten also has 2 touchdowns. He got touchdowns in one in each of the. He has. I'm tripping over my words. He has 2 touchdowns. He scored touchdowns in 2 of his last 3 games. Thank you. That's a better way of saying it. But for me, I'd rather go with Jarwin because it's a dramatic savings on DraftKings, and it's substantial enough on FanDuel that I would do the same thing. So I really, let me see if I even have Witten in my builds at all. I do not have any Jason Witten.
Okay. All right. So all in on Blake Jarwin tonight, and that's mostly due to cost, correct?
Yep. There's one. I have him in one lineup, and I've made 80, and he's not the captain. So there we are. Jarwin is in 20% of my lineups. So that's a dramatic difference between the 2 of them.
Gotcha. All right. Well, moving right along to we'll jump into the defense. Are you playing the Cowboys defense or their kicker tonight?
I would rather play the kickers. I think for our savings, let me see where they ended up for me. I'm playing, half my lineups have a kicker on it.
Yep.
And I think that's just kind of the way we've got to go. When I did my rankings, so I break down the game by position by each team, and then I do rankings. I had the kickers ranked number 5, and I put in a comment again. It's like, guys, this takes into account what we point per dollar and building our lineups, etc. We're gonna have to go to them. Jared Cook is my number 6. Blake Jarwin is number 7. It's like, all right, this is so top heavy. You've got to start deciding among the understudies here, what are we going to have? So for me, it's the kickers. There is really no difference in price. You usually like the home kicker, but Brett Maher's been around. He's been in enough high pressure situations. I have no worries for him. But I think these guys were separated by like $200. So there's. Play whichever one you like. Field goals are very fickle, but they're going to be a large part of everybody's lineup, in my opinion, just because you need the salary savings right off the bat.
Yep. Yeah. It looks like from our projections, Lutz will be the more commonly owned of the two kickers, but always tough to kind of differentiate. Uh, but he's kicking at home. It is in the dome, so if you're going to make a decision, you should feel confident that there shouldn't be any issues from that perspective. Both teams, dome teams, so they again both should be comfortable there. And to your point, and I was making lineups as well for tonight, found it impossible not to include a kicker in the lineup with the possibilities of other players. So moving right along, we're a few minutes before 7 o'clock here tonight. Let's jump over to the Saints side of the ball. What right now it looks like the projections, even though we love Zeke, it looks like Camara could be the highest owned captain. So for Draftkings. So looking at the Saints, starting at the quarterback, we talked just briefly on Bridgewater. Just to circle back on it, you're not loving Bridgewater tonight just due to the lack of ability to go deep, or is there any lineup tonight in the 80 that you're doing where you are playing both QBs perhaps?
I don't think I have both quarterbacks in one of my lineups, which is a weird game. But if we remember, now I can't even think of which game it was, but I think I can't remember if we were on the show or if I was on with Nolan. I made a lineup that didn't have either quarterback in it, and it ended up being 0.5. It was a 2v2 based on who was in my captain or not from the perfect lineup that night. So I swept everything. That was a nice night. Opening night, I literally lost everything. I did not played $118, did not get anything back. So your mileage may vary, as they say. But in this one, it looks like I do not have. I'm scanning. I'm eyeballing it. I've got about 5 of my 80 lineups. It looks like have both quarterbacks.
Okay,
that's it. So that's not very much, and that just comes down to my less than kind things to say about Mr. Bridgewater. If we look at Bridgewater, let me get back to my notes here. Dallas has the number 12 passing DVOA thus far this season, and number 4 rushing DVOA. So that's going to make it a little hard. Bridgewater is averaging 18 for 28 through the 2 starts that he's replaced Breeze. That's a 62% completion rate, which is nice in today's NFL. It's not great, but his throws are all very, very short. And he also has averaged 171 passing yards per game. He has 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. So it looks like they're just trying to have him manage the game. They got a gift win there in Seattle last week. And I think if their thought probably is if they can go 3-3 without Breeze, then they'll be in the playoff mix, because Atlanta kind of looks like a mess right now, losing their the safety again this year, and who knows what's going on with Cam Newton. So all of a sudden, you're looking at more of a potentially wide open AFC or NFC South if they can just tread water, and then hopefully Breeze comes back and is Hall of Fame Breeze. Not that he's going to carry the team, but he's the guy you want.
Yeah, no doubt. We know that they're obviously missing their leader, but there's times where we've seen teams sometimes when they have their back against the wall. They're playing with will be a raucous home crowd in New Orleans tonight. So who knows? Their defense could show up a little bit more, give Dak some fits. If they can stuff up the run and make Dak beat him strictly with his arm, who knows? They could have a good game. We know Marshawn Lattimore will be playing, likely shadowing Amari Cooper tonight. Amari a bit banged up throughout much of the week with an ankle. So who knows? With Bridgewater, managing the game, which is usually what he does, they're going to rely typically on someone like an Alvin Camaro, who saw a lot of touches last week. And while it was a game that maybe they, one might say didn't always deserve to win, they did get out with a win. In the NFL, we know there's going to be games where it can go that way. So as you look at the running back position tonight, actually, hold on, Emac. I don't want to skip the quarterback position too quickly. There's someone that we didn't mention. Oh. Any idea who that might be?
Hill.
Yes, sir. Are you playing Taysom Hill anywhere?
I just closed that window. I don't think he made it in. Um, if you just think of him as I think he's just as good as any of the tight ends. So one, he plays a little bit of quarterback. He returns kickoffs, and then he goes in as the. It's not even a wildcat. He's a quarterback. He goes into some red zone packages. So there is a scenario where he takes over for Bridgewater, and that's one I didn't plan for. But you're absolutely correct. I'm just saying I don't care what quarterback it is for the Saints. I'm just not playing them. But there is definitely a path for that.
Yeah, interesting. He was one of the guys that, as I was, looking at my lineup for tonight, and if I did want to spend on, the big names for a lot of these teams, someone like Taysom Hill could be that option. Now, he doesn't usually get a lot of touches. Maybe gets one catch, maybe gets one carry, but who knows? This week, Sean Payton, I'm sure he spent some extra time, working with this offense, working with Bridgewater. Maybe he has a larger package for someone like a Taysom Hill tonight, and they do like to use him in the red zone too. It just kind of creates some mismatches, creates some more thinking, I think, for the defense, and could catch him off guard. So maybe not someone that, starting across the board, but super cheap, and someone that, if you're looking to take a flyer or throw a Hail Mary out there on someone, maybe it's Taysom Hill. But to your point, Emac, the QB spot for the Saints really isn't someone in an area we would recommend. Moving on to the running back position, going into the season, we knew Alvin Camaro would be the lead dog there. A lot of folks expect Latavius Murray to shoulder some of the heavy lifting from a short yardage perspective. With Breeze gone, his number of snaps upside is really limited just because they don't have the ball enough or so much in the red zone. How do you feeling about Camara? Are you playing Latavius Murray at all? Break down that position for us on the Saints side of the ball.
Sure, Latavius Murray is not quite getting the work that we had hoped initially. Now, again, this Saints team. They've had to change everything that was planned, so there's less plays, and they're trying to get it to Kamara, and that just because he's their most dynamic guy. So we haven't really seen Latavius Murray get a chance. So it's not that he's not capable. We know that he is. We know that he's actually one of the better backup running backs in the league. He can catch the ball a little bit. He's fine in the red zone, and he can score touchdowns. So, it's one of those where it's just it's interesting. Sorry, I gotta turn my notifications off here because someone was pestering me. But I don't know. I want to throw my hands in the air. I don't know. It gets so confusing after these first 3 or 4 guys, and I think that's where you need to separate and be uncomfortable, and that's where playing a bunch of lineups is. I mean, I've got my my $50 out here. I'm not playing a ton because I played a lot today because I was home for the first time in 2 weeks. So I played way more than I should have, and I'm taking it a little easier tonight. So. I usually play about $150 on the showdowns. I've only got about $55 out there tonight, but I played about $1,000 today on the other stuff. So that's a lot of money. So I said, you know what? Let's just step back here and be rational. So if you're, but my point being is, I made my 80 lineups there, and I can take some chances with some of the stuff. Now I've gone with I'm not worried about Taysom Hill game script. I've said no to the Saints quarterbacks. And Latavius Murray is not coming up in my lineups either. Let's see how much I have. He has 4%, and he is a captain in 1 lineup. That's it. So he's on, what does that work out to? 3 of my 80 lineups. So not very much. You need an in-game injury to happen. You need something to happen to Kamara, or you need him to get 2 red zone touchdowns, and it's a 17-14 game. Then he becomes a factor.
Yep. And, the way Dallas is moving the ball this year, a lot of people don't see it going that way. But again, who knows, right? So moving on from Kamara in the running back position for New Orleans, breaking down that wideout spot. And you look at lineups and projections, it's hard to see, it's hard to play anyone that's not named Michael Thomas in the wideout spot. just because of Breeze going down. I like Ted Ginn a lot. I think it's great to see him contributing still at a good level and later in his career. But is there anybody else besides Michael Thomas at the receiver spot that you are throwing in your lineups? Maybe balancing some budgets or throwing a Hail Mary out there. Is there anybody else that you do like, or are we staying away?
Staying away. I cannot see clear paths for anybody. And
Okay.
outside of Michael Thomas, and even then, I'm not overly excited by him. So this is going to be this is going to be one where this is not for the faint of heart. This is a game where if you're willing to take chances, you could be amply rewarded, but you're gonna just have to say goodbye to that money. And that's what I've sort of how I look at the showdown is I'm just like, all right, if I get anything back, it's lucky, and I move on. And I play about half my volume is in head-to-heads and three-mans. So I should get some back just because I let other people make the mistakes. But even then, like that first one, I was the one that made the mistakes. And you had no hope and you're done. So it's just everything is so magnified. I look at these as entertainment dollars at best. Did you get any money back when you went to the last movie? No. When you played golf? No. When you went fishing? No. Okay, here's your entertainment. So you can't get mad about it.
Yeah, that's fair points, right? It's tough to decipher what's going to happen in one particular game, and really anything can happen. So you just never quite know. And tonight's game, there's a lot of players that we expect to play well, and it's hard to select who that random player will be. Moving on from the wide receiver position, since there's not much to talk about, the tight end spot maybe even offers more to talk about. We touched on Jared Cook briefly. Josh Hill, the other tight end for the Saints, only 3 targets in the year for him. Jared Cook has seen 12. I think, I saw some comments flying in. I think a lot of people like Cook tonight. Where are you from that perspective, Mac?
I think he's okay. I'm not against it. I'm not expecting much. So he has ended up on. So I'm playing him I'm doing the primetime cash games, head-to-heads and stuff. So he is my tight end, but I didn't like anybody else here at tight end. On the showdown, he is on 11% of my lineups. He is not a captain in any of them. He is, Jarwin is on 19%, Cook is on 11%, and Witten's on 1%. So I just don't see it. There's only so many ways we can talk about this. If you wanted to go for the savings, well, I'd rather go with Jarwin. So would everybody else. Go with Josh Hill. I mean, he's the backup. He has, as you mentioned, 3 targets on the year. But if you're going to get lucky, you're going to get lucky. And there we are. There's arguments for Dalton Schultz. Don't play Dalton Schultz, though. He last year, I think he had like 15 or 20 catches. He didn't have a lot. So those guys are just not great. So Cook looks so much better by comparison. But we got to remember, last year was a career year. He's been in the league for like 10 or 11 years. And we come back to the same problem. He's got Teddy Bridgewater throwing him the ball. So while he's big and he's close to the line of scrimmage, those are the attributes that you like. I would be shocked if he gets more than 5 or 6 targets tonight.
Yep. Yeah, what he does with those 5 or 6 targets, they end up being in the red zone. Potentially could pay dividends, but again, looking at your lineups tonight, someone like Cook is a little bit cheaper, and even if he gets a few targets, maybe spin something into a short dump off touchdown type of thing to help save you. We know that's what it's all about. Moving past the tight end position, is there any lineups that you're playing the Saints defense?
Let's double check. On defense, I am playing 9% of the Saints defense and none of the Cowboys. The Cowboys were just priced out. There was just no way I was going to get there. I'm just seeing if I have the Saints in a captain spot. I have 3% of the Saints in the captain spot. So that was higher than I expected. But the field is at 1%. So it's all negligible. there. But I would rather play the Saints defense.
I see, based on some of our projections, it's interesting. The Saints captained potentially in more lineups than the Cowboys. So we're interested to see where that lands. Are you, if we're talking DraftKings and we're talking captain spots, because I saw some of these popping in earlier, and the defense is always a topic of conversation for that position. With tonight's offensive stars, is there any lineups that you have? Maybe it's the Cowboys defense in your captain spot?
I wouldn't get there. I just I I don't see that outcome, which is kind of funny because you want to live on the edge for these things. I just it's a price play for me, and I'm just not getting there. I don't think the Saints throw. You need a pick six for sure. I don't think we're gonna get more than 3 or 4 sacks at the most. I don't think we'll get more than 1 or 2 interceptions at the most. So it just the volume isn't going to be there. The only reason I went to the Saints is they were cheaper.
Yep.
And if we look at the 2-game prime time, I am not playing the Cowboys either. I am playing the Bengals, the Saints, and the Steelers, all about 30% each for the lineups that I am downloading and uploading right now from Fantasy Cruncher.
So not high on either defense for tonight. Sounds like if you're looking at cost in that ballpark, kickers may be the more preferred options. So as we look at, just a few minutes here until lock, we've kind of drained through position by position. So taking a step back, is there anybody that maybe we didn't mention? Any flyers out there? Any Hail Marys? Any chance that we see a touchdown or a target for our good friend little Jordan Humphrey tonight?
All right, so he actually was the last guy I wrote in my lineups or in my rankings, and I believe I said I just wanted to type his name because it seemed like it would be fun, and it was. It was. So let me see here. He did not make any of my lineups. Who knows? Weird stuff happens. We saw Pardon?
Tavon Austin returning kicks. Maybe he gets a target or an end around type of thing. Any lineups where you're throwing a Hail Mary? If you're in a big contest, and you're trying to differentiate yourself, is there anyone that you are taking that flyer on? Is it someone like an Austin, perhaps?
It would be Tavon Austin, and you're hoping for a long return touchdown or a gimmicky play, and he hasn't had one of those in years now. So it's very sad because he was so talented and he was so good in college, but it just has not translated to the NFL.
Yeah, it's incredible that he got that huge contract from the Rams years ago, and then it seemed like a year later he was already dispensable for them. So who knows? Maybe he makes a big play tonight. And I got to ask, the one thing that I think as I'm putting together lineups, and sometimes you'll enter these large contests, a lot of people entering, a lot of lineups in. If you're taking a chance, and again, we're talking about maybe the captain spot, outside of the main kind of core group of players, who is that? I talked about the Bears game on Monday night where it was, Taylor Gabriel out of nowhere kind of shot up for 3 touchdowns. If you're not maybe playing one of those main top 3 or 4 guys tonight, EMAC, who is the outlier that you slid into your captain spot?
Blake Jarwin would be the guy, and that's DraftKings.
Yep.
On FanDuel, I don't, because you don't get that the savings you get the 1.15 or probably the 1.5 multiplier, but it doesn't go on against the salary. So it's really hard on FanDuel to play anybody outside of Elliott, Prescott, Kamara, and Cooper in that spot. It just is crazy unless you get a lucky, Randall Cobb channels is in or Cole Beasley and gets 2 touchdowns. Like we like to call the Thanksgiving Day special. But you would need something really weird to happen. Same thing if you go with the defenses. These guys don't have anything behind them. Michael Thomas, I just don't see him getting the volume but we saw he was incredibly efficient last year. Of course, that was Brees throwing him the ball, but he still needs 2 touchdowns to pop as captain, because I don't think he's going to get 100 yards. Excuse me, tonight. A likely outcome for him is what, 70? I haven't looked at his prop, but I bet it's about 70.
Yeah, I think that sounds right in the ballpark for sure. You know, I was throwing together some lineups. We got a couple minutes here. I think one thing I want to try, EMAC, is we take a stab at someone. We revisit it next week, see where we're at. I took my stab at Jason Witten this week to find the end zone. I threw him into the captain spot. It's a random, nothing I feel confident in, but allowed me to take on a lot of the more expensive players. He makes a few catches, maybe finds the end zone, but Jarwin seems to be the common play. Everybody likes him. I wanted to kind of buck the trend there and take Witten, but who knows? I'm sure I'll be wrong this week.
No, that's a nice way to do it and to look at it. So,
all right, just a couple minutes left. Any kind of last minute thoughts or last minute questions? Throw them in there. EMAC, as you're wrapping up lineups for today, any other kind of closing thoughts?
Yeah, let's talk for a little second here about fantasy draft. I'm wearing my fantasy draft T-shirt, but I'm looking here at my account, and let me see. I've only played a couple weeks here. I have saved $37.25 in Rake. Now I had to pay $5.99 for my $1,000 for this month, and I had to when I uploaded my $200, I had to pay 3% on that. So that's $11 that I had to pay. I have since earned the $37 credit. So let me see. If I had played on the sites that don't charge you when you make a deposit, I would have spent $37. I played on the site that did charge me to deposit, and I have paid $11 for the same amount of volume in play. You're crazy if you're not looking at this. And that's just, I played week one. I played week one. I think I played 20 lineups in their $1 million contest. Last week I did not play because I did not get into the contest, and I was in Iowa. Who knew? Iowa, no DFS. The kicker of that was I could see Illinois. Our hotel was right on the Mississippi, and then the other side was Illinois. But I did not drive over there to enter a contest, and then I played this week. So and I played a couple baseball this week as well. So there you go. It's a good deal. You're crazy if you're not taking them up on this. They had the only rake free contest of its type, $700,000 this week. Probably drop down to $500,000 or $600,000 next week, but it's still going to be rake free. And hey, anybody can win. I'm going to drop this link in chat, and this link is going to be for us to root along with one Adam Ship My Money Sharer, who is right now in first place for $100,000, sweating out a game here. Now, he's hoping this isn't the Tampa Bay Los Angeles game that had 95 combined points. I'm very sad that game had 95 combined points, but there we are. But yeah, that's gonna do it. We're up here at Lock. We are gonna be live before Lock. We will do NFL tomorrow. It will be myself, and it will be Nolan Kelly. And then we've got all sorts of DFS strategy shows throughout every day, Monday through Saturday. And that we'll be turning those into podcasts because we're out of the baseball regular season. That finished up today. Baseball playoffs start on Tuesday, and Wednesday are the 2 wild card games. And then everything starts in earnest on Friday. I don't know that we're going to have shows for that, but we will have all of our tools available, the projections, popularity, Alex's rankings, all of that stuff. It's a little harder to do a lot of analysis for Major League Baseball playoffs because it's all really good pitchers and it's a lot of really good hitters. Surprise, they're the best teams. So it's more game theory and luck than anything else. I know we don't like to use the word luck. If something bad happens, it was variance. If something good happens, well, we're brilliant. It's also lucky. But there we are. So that's what we've got coming up. But we'll be hitting heavy. Hockey starts. I believe the regular season for hockey starts on Thursday. And then NBA preseason, and you guys know Fast Eddie's gearing up for that, so I believe we'll have Fast Eddie and Rinpack as well doing shows for that. Still a coin flip if those are going to be premium shows or not. We'll have to see. But you have plenty of content up for us. So this is the next few days is when you want to do nice things for your wives, your girlfriends, your significant others, because once basketball starts again, we're all going to be glued to the computer. So these next couple weeks, enjoy and earn some brownie points so you can get 7 hours of commercial-free football on Sundays plus the night game. But with that, we are going to get on out of here. Again, thank you for joining me, Eric. You can follow us on Twitter at our respective handles that are underneath us. And thank you to Fantasydraft for sponsoring the show. With that, gamers, good luck.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Have a good night.